Thank you, Lindy. Thank you, Don. And good morning, everyone. It's wonderful to be back here again. One day, an old man was told that he had 2 weeks to live. He was dying. So he decided to call his doctor, his lawyer, and his minister to his bedside. And he said to them, "I know that everyone says you can't take your money with you when you go, but I'm going to give it my best shot." So he said, "I have a package for each of you that has $300,000 in cash in it. And at my funeral, before the casket is closed, I want you each to walk by and put that package in the casket with me." They all agreed to do that. So the day of the funeral came. They all walked by, put a package, each one of them, in the casket before it was closed, and then rode together on the way to the cemetery. And as they were riding, the minister spoke first. He said, "I have a confession to make. We are badly in need of a new roof at my church. So I took $100,000 out of that package before I put it in the casket." A little while later, the doctor said, "I too have a confession. We are badly in need of new equipment at the hospital, and I took $200,000 out of that package before I put it in the casket." After that, the lawyer said, "I am shocked at both of you." He said, "I'll have you know that my personal check for the entire $300,000 went into that casket." As we know in Unity, the only thing we will be taking with us when we go is our consciousness. And forgiveness has a great deal to do with that consciousness that we will be taking with us. Forgiveness is one of my favorite topics. Why? Well, first, it's a big how-to for having a life that works. Next, it's the biggest way to reclaim our inherent innocence. Next, here's our co-founder, Charles Fillmore, who said, "Here is a mental treatment that is guaranteed to cure every ill that flesh is heir to. Sit for a half hour every night and mentally forgive everyone against whom you have any ill will. If you fear or are prejudiced against even an animal," he said, "mentally ask forgiveness of it and send it thoughts of love. If you have accused anyone of injustice, if you have discussed anyone unkindly, if you have criticized or gossiped about anyone, withdraw your words by asking him or her in the silence to forgive you." And then we have A Course in Miracles, which says, "Forgiveness removes a block to the awareness of love's presence." And it says love is our natural state. And finally, forgiveness is one of Jesus' major teachings. Can you imagine if on the cross Jesus had said to those who put him there, "You know, I really hate you guys. for doing this to me. But of course, that's not what Jesus did or said at all. At his trial with Pontius Pilate, Pilate said to Jesus, "Speak up, man. Don't you know that I have the power of life and death over you?" Jesus said to Pilate, "You have no power at all, except that which is given to you by my Father in heaven." Now that's a little archaic language. In modern day language, this is what Jesus was saying. Pilate, this is all my idea. I am not your victim, and you are an extra in my movie. Instead of hating them all, Jesus forgave them all. Ernie Larson, in one of his books, said, "The biggest barrier we have to forgiveness is our resistance to feeling good." I think that's so important, I'm going to repeat it. Here's what Ernie Larson said: "The biggest barrier we have to forgiveness is our resistance to feeling good." And that is aligned with mystics throughout the ages who said the biggest addiction people have is our addiction to pain. David Owen Ritz, in his wonderful series of classes called Keys to the Kingdom, said, he talked about resentment being resentiment. All of those times when, anybody ever do this along with me? Rehearse over and over again what someone did to you? That's resentment or resentiment. Forgiveness of any kind is helpful. But in unity, we have the opportunity to join Jesus in a deeper kind of forgiveness. I call that kind of forgiveness transformational forgiveness, because it's based on knowing our divinity, including our divine power of creation. Here's the old way of forgiveness, which I know well from my background, and maybe you do too. This old way of forgiveness is based on what A Course in Miracles calls our ego. A Course in Miracles tells us that our ego is who we believe we are when we feel separate from God and each other. So in this old way of forgiveness, here's what we say: "You hurt me, and I was your victim. But I, being the more spiritually advanced of the two of us, now deign to forgive you, you jerk. Otherwise, I would be stooping to your level." Does anyone except me know this one? Transformational forgiveness is a three-part process. The first step is fully feeling the hurt and anger we experienced. In your program today, you have this quote on the back side from a guy called Dr. Todd Davis. Dr. Davis is a psychiatrist and a student of A Course in Miracles, and this is what he said: "I will not suppress my angry feelings. This is the single most important part of forgiveness because it is the key to it." He then continued, "How can I forgive someone I never felt free to blame? And boy, is that me as a child." So he said, "I will think of blame as a stepping stone to forgiveness." In unity, not including this first step, is something we call an attempt at spiritual bypass. Spiritual bypass is when we try to have the results without doing the work. Does anybody know that one? Most of us as kids learned not to feel or express angry feelings. Our parents didn't know how to express anger appropriately. And as I said, we will be learning and talking about and doing this at the workshop that I'll be leading on the 14th. Our parents didn't know how to express anger appropriately, so they couldn't teach us how to do it either. Instead, we learned how to act out anger by getting even. When I was a child, as I said, I was afraid to feel angry. I was certainly afraid to say anything angry toward my parents. So instead, I acted it out by getting even. As a child, my favorite way of getting even was to go on what I call a slowdown strike. When I had a job to do like a chore, mowing the lawn, changing the bedding, I would do it, but at a really, really, really slow pace. That was a way of getting even instead of expressing angry feelings. And as an adult, unfortunately for some of the people around me and myself, I also was afraid to express angry feelings. So I got even with my first wife. I'm in my second marriage. My first wife, I got even with her by giving her the silent treatment. Have you ever been in a relationship with somebody who gave you the silent treatment? Not much fun, is it? Most of you, along with me, remember our one-time governor, Jesse Ventura, don't you? How can we forget, right? I remember Jesse saying, "I don't get mad, I get even." He said this in a bragging way. And I remember thinking at the time, what is that to brag about? Everybody who doesn't get mad gets even. The problem with getting even is that we're still suppressing our anger. Also, it's still harming our bodies and getting in our way. And along with that, our deepest feelings and emotions are constantly creating our experience in life. So we attract angry people to us, and we attract situations that will bring our anger to the surface, like road rage, or angry neighbors, or children crying on airplanes. I still remember when I was a student at Unity Village and living in Lee's Summit, which is a town next door. Again, with my first wife, we were living in an apartment. And our next door neighbors were this really angry couple. And they yelled at each other almost every night. And I still remember as I walked past their apartment saying, "Thank God I'm not like that." Well, in those days, there were at least two basic principles I did not know yet. The first one was, every judgmental thought I have about other people is a projection of an unloving thought I have about myself. And the other thing I didn't know was, everyone in my life is my mirror. I actually was as angry as that. I just didn't know it yet. The second step in forgiveness is that we reclaim our divine power of creation by knowing, along with Jesus, and actually along with Emmett Fox as well, nothing happens to me. Everything in my life happens through me. I'm going to say that just half of it first and then the other half, and I'm going to ask you to know it with me out loud. First half is this: nothing happens to me. Together? Nothing happens to me. Everything in my life happens through me. Together? Everything in my life happens through me. And it's always because there's a gift I want from every creation in my life. Eckhart Tolle said this one step goes a long way in undoing our ego. Several years ago, in my late 60s, I was a transitional minister for a year in Hartford, Connecticut. And shortly after I arrived in Hartford, it began to become apparent to me that one of the board members just did not like me at all. I felt like I could not do one thing right in her presence. One day, I asked the board president, am I right about this? I mean, it seems like I can't do anything right around her. And he said, Phil, what you need to know is she didn't like you before you got here. He said, before you got here, she said to me, I have a bad vibe about this guy. So when I went inside and asked what to do about it, what I heard from the Holy Spirit in me was to do this inside myself, to work on this inside myself. And I thought to myself, what does this remind me of from my childhood? And the biggest thing that came to me was, I was the sixth child. By the time I got there, my parents were really tired, number one. And number two, they were both alcoholics by that point. And I decided they didn't want me. And I also decided I'm guilty for being here on the planet. So morning after morning after morning, I worked on this idea of forgiving my parents for not knowing how to want me any more than they knew how, and forgiving myself for believing that I was guilty for being here. And by the time I left Hartford, that board member and I were really good friends. The third step in forgiveness is to practice correcting any old decisions that we made about ourselves that are not in keeping with our divinity. Like, I'm guilty for being here. Like, I'm not worth loving. We do this so that we don't have to bring people and events into our lives who bring these old feelings and beliefs to the surface, like I did with that board member. Stuart Emery, who wrote a wonderful book called Actualizations. Actually, I like the subtitle better than the name of the book. The subtitle is, You Don't Have to Rehearse to Be Yourself. He said in his book, it's not the long ago events that made us crazy. It's the decisions that we made about ourselves that made us crazy. In Debbie Ford's wonderful book, The Dark Side of the Light Chasers, she talked about a woman who was 66 years old and came to a workshop, a week-long workshop that she led. This woman had throat polyps, and she had begun to believe, this is a woman named Janet, she had started to come to believe that there was an emotional component to this. Janet had grown up in a family where her dad told her, good girls never say anything negative. And they most certainly don't curse or swear. So, Janet had grown up with that belief and still continued to live that way, as in never saying anything negative. And now here she was in a workshop dealing with throat polyps. And I'll let Debbie Ford say the rest. Debbie Ford said, in the workshop, for 5 days, we yelled and cursed. Cursing was forbidden, so she had never allowed herself to curse. Then the moment came when she said the F word. What a release! Janet's whole body shook. The entire next day, she walked around with a huge grin on her face. It had taken every ounce of courage she had to do this work, even though her father was long dead. 6 months later, Janet was feeling great, and her throat was completely clear. She was expressing herself joyfully, and she had finally made peace with and forgiven her father. Her throat polyps were not there to punish her. They were there as a wake-up call. When we know that we asked the people and events by whom we feel victimized to come into our life, we can say along with Jesus, "You are an extra in my movie." And continue by saying, "I asked the universe to send you to me so I could heal a mistaken decision I made about myself in the past. Like in my case, I'm guilty for being here." So I'm going to ask you right now, if there's anyone in your life with whom forgiveness is not complete. Can you think of one person? Just one for now. Bring that person to mind, and then step one is, once again, to let yourself feel the hurt and anger. I'm going to repeat what Dr. Davis said. I will not suppress my angry feelings. This is the single most important part of forgiveness because it is the key to it. How can I forgive someone I never felt free to blame? I will think of blame as a stepping stone toward forgiveness. Step two, regarding that person, accept your divine power of creation. As in, once again, knowing with me, nothing happens to me. Together, nothing happens to me. Everything that happens in my life happens through me. Together, everything that happens in my life happens through me. And then know with me, everyone in my life is an extra. I ordered from Central Casting because there's a gift I want from our interaction. And most likely that gift has to do with healing an old mistaken decision, like me with that board member. And then step three, practice correcting your mistaken decision with affirmative prayer. So here's a couple more affirmations I'm going to ask you to join me in saying. Here's the first one. I am completely lovable. Together? I am completely lovable. Take a breath and see how good that feels, because it's the truth about you. And here's the second one, which has been really important for my own personal healing. And that is, everything gets better when I show up. Together? Everything gets better when I show up. That is not only true for me, and it is true for me, it is also true for every single one of you as well. Jesus didn't teach us to forgive so we could be good. He didn't teach us to forgive so we could be moral. He didn't teach us to forgive so we could earn God points. Jesus taught us to forgive so that we can stop hurting ourselves. He taught us to forgive so that we can release the past. He taught us to forgive so that we can have the abundant life we deserve. And he taught us to forgive so that we can reclaim our inherent innocence. Transformational forgiveness is a powerful way of life, and it's a way to have more peace, more abundance, and more fulfillment in every way. Namaste.